a second reading. It's a.
I call this meeting of the Sawyer County Zoning Committee to order. Kathy, can we do a roll call, please?
Ron,
Present.
Bruce,
Here.
Dawn,
Here.
Troy, Jesse.
Here.
Two of you do. Thank you.
Okay, pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the
Allegiance to the flag.
United States of America, to the republic
To the republic which stands
one nation,
one nation,
God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with
justice.
liberty and justice for all.
All right, statement of committee and hearing procedure. The full statement of the committee and the hearing procedure document, including directions for all or for individuals wishing to speak at a public hearing to be conducted at the zoning committee meeting, are available in the rear of the room next to the agenda for today's meeting. The statement of the committee and hearing procedure document is hereby incorporated into the record for this committee meeting. Statement of the hearing notice. Any public hearing conducted at today's committee meeting has been published as a Class 2 notice in accordance with Chapter 985 of the Wisconsin statutes in the Sawyer County Record and the Sawyer County Gazette, and posted. Okay, need approval of the June 19th minutes.
I'll move to
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. Public comment.
How are you?
3 public comment sheets that were turned in. Do you want me to read these?
No, if I could be recognized.
Yes.
From the same person?
They are.
Yes, go ahead, Linda.
Thank you. Linda Zillmer, speaking as an individual and as a property owner in Edgewater, and also from the perspective of having been on the Edgewater Plan Commission and serving as its first chair. And as speaking as an individual, but also a member on the update of the Sawyer County Plan Commission. What I'm speaking to today is in general proposed changes, general changes to the Sawyer County zoning ordinance, and 2 of them are up today under new business. One of them having to do with changes to trailer camps and campgrounds, and one having to do with bunkhouses. I'm not objecting to hearing and discussing those proposed changes or things that have been brought forward from the public. What I do want to ask you to do is postpone advancing them to either towns or moving them forward through the process until a couple of things happen. Number 1, we have some new members on the zoning committee and some members who maybe have not received the full training. So I think before we advance general ordinances, that the committee members become trained. The second, could you remind me, can I have my sheets for a minute? I got lost. Thank you. So yeah, so zoning training, I think, should be a prerequisite before there are any recommendations to send anything to towns or advance them to county board. Also, right now, because the zoning or zoning ordinance is also somewhat connected with the county's comprehensive plan, and to this point there hasn't been that coordination between the planning committee and the zoning committee. I guess I would like to also postpone advancing the changes until there has been some kind of understanding of what the current comprehensive plan is and the updates. Because there are some things here where the zoning committee is going to be asked to balance things like protection of the environment with development. And so the 2 items that you have today are one of those balancing things that have been identified. And then finally is to kind of give an advanced question for legal review regarding proposed amendments. My understanding, and I maybe need to be better informed, is that we have a lot of illegal uses or structures out there now. It has been an issue for the resources that the zoning department has to be able to follow up on compliance and enforcement. And so a lot of these things exist that shouldn't be. Maybe it's oversized decks, maybe it's bunkhouses. And that by possibly adopting changes to the zoning ordinance, that does not make them legal, and it does not make them legal non-conforming structures or anything else. These structures and uses are out there. They're illegal either with regard to specific provisions of the zoning ordinance or just by the fact that they're not allowed, they're implied as prohibited. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Okay, Jay, we don't have no rezones?
Yeah, and I don't see anyone else, in case you did want to ask for additional public comment.
Yeah.
I don't see
Is
anyone
anyone
else
else out there?
online here.
All right.
But yeah, moving on then. As you say, we have no conditional use permit applications this month or rezone applications. Moving on to new business, we have a proposed ordinance amendment to the Sawyer County zoning ordinance of section 6.611, parent 5. This is for trailer camps and campgrounds. This was brought to our department and then brought to this committee as a citizen's request to look into the language specified as 6.611, which I'll bring up here on the screen. This has to deal with open detached structures within campgrounds. This would be for decks, patios, etc. The current ordinance would have that a deck is not to exceed 6 feet out from the main wall of the camper and not exceed the entire length of the camper. We had heard testimony last month that some of these campers coming in now, are upwards of 30, 34 feet. And having a 6 foot wide by 34 foot long deck really doesn't have that great of functionality. It's not that functional as to, at least what we had heard from, I believe it was Mr. Will Wallace from Bear Paw Campground that had spoke on this. I was then tasked by this committee to poll other counties to see what they allow in campgrounds. Somewhat split, where several counties allow no decks at all in campgrounds. Those that do allow decks in campgrounds have it more around a 200 square foot cap. So that is what I proposed for this language. Again, I have no stake in this. This was a citizen's request, and then again, tasked by this committee to kind of come up with draft language as to be similar to other surrounding counties, not only in our district, but throughout the state. I have included language here as well that if you are to have a deck on these campers, well, A, they do require a land use permit, and that they'd still be a minimum 10-foot setback from another campsite. Then also added the language that the open detached structures shall not exceed a total of 200 square feet. That is my kind of brief into this. Phil Neese had requested that I also share this letter that he had drafted, which you do have in your packets there as well. Apparently back in 2017, there was some type of subcommittee that was also looking into this, whether it was an official capacity of the county board subcommittee. I don't remember that. It might have been more of a town citizens group looking into this. But he wanted me to get this letter out to the committee members to, look at other options. That if we're going to open, and these are his words, if we're going to open Pandora's box with allowing, different size deck configurations within the campgrounds, that we also look at the potential of requiring licensing or individual permits on each camper within a licensed campground or at a condominium. Apparently back in 2017, there was a proposal to have a sticker or permit fee on these campers, whether it be for $100 annual fee or $200 annual fee. And that is some of his information that he had provided on that sheet. This is more of just to get the discussion out there that there is a potential for additional revenue. With that additional revenue, there could be additional enforcement to actually, look at the licensing within the larger campgrounds that we seem to be having now within the county, and making sure that they are in compliance, not only from a state health inspection standpoint, but also county zoning standpoint.
So Jay, if we did do this, would your staff be able to have the time to inspect these?
For Phil's proposal or for?
Well, I would say for Phil's proposal.
At the current staff we have, no, we wouldn't have time. This would be something where we'd have to combine forces or resources with the current health department, who actually does the licensing procedures. Being an agent of the state, the Sawyer County Health Department actually goes out and does the inspections on the campgrounds. You're most likely, if we were to do something like this, you're probably going to need at least a part-time position, something in the summer where we can have an additional individual check to make sure that they are licensed correctly, that they have received their sticker, and they are in compliance with other not only zoning but county health department rules and regs. What Phil had just quickly come up here with, he had that there's a little over 2,000 campsites within Sawyer County, 80% of those being seasonal. That I guess 1,660 would need a sticker or permit. If you did $200 per sticker or permit, that would be $332,000. Apparently there's a less remitted to the towns of $32,000, but that would be a $300,000 county revenue, where a portion of that revenue would obviously need to be encompassed in a part-time position. And again, this is just a talking point.
Could we deal with this first and then talk about the $200 fee?
And I had mentioned that to Phil as well, that, do we want to have these as separate issues, or are they handled in such? And his response, again, this was yesterday when I had spoken with him, is that if you're going to go down this road and, starting to allow for openings within campgrounds, that this should at least be in the same breadth of the discussion.
Right.
Again, his words, not mine.
Yeah, no, I agree, but I don't think, they may be connected, but it's a real small string. Let's deal with this one and then talk about additional fee revenue, because I guess, yes.
Right. I agree with that own thinking, so.
So the change would be the 10-foot setback and 200 square feet.
Correct. And really the 200 was somewhat arbitrary in that it came from other counties using that 200 square feet. We also used 200 square feet for several other zoning provisions, whether it be a 200 square foot open-sided structure when you have a lake house, you want to have a structure closer to water. We also talk about the 200 square foot lateral expansion on existing non-conforming. So 200 square feet is a commonly used area within other zoning realms. So it just seems to make sense. You don't want 267 feet. It's just a weirder number to have. Right. So, and I was just going to do some calculations again, because we did hear last month that some of these campers now are upwards of 34 feet. Some of them, I think he said average was 34, didn't he? 38, some of them being the longest now.
Yes.
Where the current ordinance would allow you 6 feet out from the main wall by the entire length of the camper. If you had a 38 foot or 38 foot long camper, 6 by 38 is already 228 square feet, which you could lawfully do right now. It's that width out from the camper, which has been the issue for the campgrounds. And that 6 feet, really, when you're looking at having any type of functional deck, it isn't that wide.
No.
So we didn't want to put a max width, but just cap a square footage. And again, you'd have to meet all other setbacks, whether it's road setbacks or lake setbacks for those that are near water. And then also to include that you're not having a deck bump right up to your next door neighbor's camper, so a 10-foot setback from their campsite.
Okay. So under this, I could build a deck that's 20 feet out, 10 feet wide.
As long as you meet the other setback.
That's 10 foot minimum.
Or 2 feet wide and 100 feet long.
Yeah, that's a good point. Not to exceed.
Yeah, and that's the length here. The length shall not extend beyond the enclosed body of the
Okay.
camping equipment.
Okay, so that's
So you
what
couldn't
they,
fit a 2x100 unless you got a 100-foot long camper.
But if it goes out away from the camper, then that's not exceeding, you're saying the total,
That is true. Yeah, you could have 2x100 out. Yeah.
Why?
I guess. I don't know why you want to, but I do understand your point there. Yeah. I mean, we could throw a
I
max.
don't think it's necessary. I was just.
Okay. No, but those are the things we struggle with zoning. There's always that gray area where
Right.
it wouldn't surprise me if you saw something weird like that, where someone had a 30-foot by, 4-foot deck
Right.
just because they can.
But as long as they meet the 10-foot minimum
Right.
setback, I mean,
Rebecca, did you have a chance to look at that?
I haven't, but I was just wondering if, Jay, did you have a chance to look at the ATCP admin code for campgrounds? I mean, I understand the county is an agent of the state,
we have a forum.
but there still may be restrictions in ATCP
Yes.
whether we can do this.
I have not. Again, we've already allowed decks currently in the ordinance. Not saying that that was ever in compliance with ATCP to begin with, but yes, certainly probably something that needs to be double checked prior to us ever, fully passing this or holding a public hearing on it. Now, whether or not this committee would want to postpone that until either legal review of ATCP or to forward this on to the towns, it's whether you put the horse in front of the cart or not. You could run into an issue where if you approve this, it goes to towns, then we find out that ATCP has some restrictions. Well, now we have to rework things to send it back to the towns.
I guess my thought on this, before we send it to the town, is that we have this looked at and reviewed. So we're not going through that process later.
Right.
I guess, I would like it reviewed before we send it to the town. I don't know what the rest of the committee thinks, but, that's my stand on it.
I agree with you. What are those initials stand for then?
Oh, ATCP is the Wisconsin Administrative Code chapter. ATCP, campgrounds is specifically in chapter 79.
Oh.
So ATCP is the shortened version for DACAP. So it's because campground regulation falls
Right.
under the jurisdiction of DACAP.
All right.
And I'm looking through ATCP 79 right now to see if I can find an answer quick that, that the county would have authority to do this, and I can't find anything. The challenge with the admin codes, particularly with DACAP codes, is there's oftentimes overlay and cross jurisdiction with other admin codes. So I guess I'm not surprised if I can't find an answer very quickly. Again, these can be challenging to work with for the ATCPs.
So then we don't need to act on it right now then, right?
You don't. It's discussion, possible or potential action. So you don't actually even have to take action or have a motion. You probably would at least want to have discussion that if that is the way that we include this again on next month's agenda with legal review of the ATCP requirements.
I'd make that motion.
I have a second that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second on the floor for review. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries to have review.
Mr. Chairman, would it be appropriate to make another motion that the staff be instructed to investigate charging a $200 fee for any campers that are on the site more than 30 days consecutive?
Yes, I believe so.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, I will second that motion. Okay, we have a motion on a second on the floor to, Bruce, how did you word that?
That we instruct the staff to investigate, I'll call it the feasibility of establishing a $200 fee for
Okay, yeah,
any vehicle facility on the campground that's there for more than 30 consecutive days.
okay. Okay, wait, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Good morning, sir.
How are you today?
Good double, I'm on county board, Zoom, and just this one twice. Sorry.
Running back to been for discussion, but my question is, since this came out last month's meeting, I've been paying more attention to campgrounds that I've been in and around. There's a fair amount, Jay, there's a fair amount of decks that are over this.
Yeah.
That are out there right now, and I'm thinking, is, if you cite these people, or if we hire this LTE to do this job, whether it's a health and human services person or whatever, is there a fine? Is there a process?
There is.
Okay.
There would be a citation, either order of removal, after the fact permits, or citation with removals.
Gotcha.
And the after the fact permit bears a penalty, correct?
Double the initial fee.
What would be the initial fee?
Depends on square footage, but generally if it's 100 square feet to 200 square feet, it'd be a $50 permit fee. So it'd be $100.
$100.
Okay.
Rebecca, you had something you want to say?
Real quick, there may be funding for that LTE position, because I know that if you're acting as agent for DACAP, oftentimes there is available funding. So just something else to explore, consider.
Right.
I mean, I certainly don't know if that's the case, but.
Okay, that would be Health and Human Services funding.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
believe so.
since we're still on the topic, I mean, this is a semi-daunting task to look into, but certainly I think considers merit of actually looking into it. I mean, one of the reasons of having this is, campers, be it that they're on wheels and licensed, don't have an assessed value to them. So when you have a campground, that campground owner is only paying taxes on the land value.
Right.
They're not paying taxes on people camping there. Now, they may take an annual fee and they have to pay some DADCAP fees to operate a licensed campground, but those are very minimal.
Right.
And a lot of these campers that we're seeing now, whether they be your park models or your campers that are there all summer long, again, they're not paying taxes in Sawyer County, yet they're using all the resources that we have, whether it's emergency services, whether it's enjoying our lakes, whether it's driving on our roads, without paying those same taxes that someone that has a small cabin right next door.
Right.
So that's the mindset of doing this, is that if you're not paying the taxes yet using the services, why don't we come up with some type of annual fee?
Right.
I do, I guess, have questions as to what you're wanting me to investigate as far as what positions would be needed or how we would go about doing this. Again, I saw this yesterday and heard about it yesterday, so I'm somewhat in the dark as how this whole process would end up working as well. Not only the legal ramifications behind it, or how to bring it through committees of jurisdiction if we ever pass this, but there's quite a few implications with going through this process. So
Right. I've got some ideas, so maybe offline we could just exchange the ideas.
sure.
If that's okay with you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, you sure can.
Good.
What you're talking about though, Mr. Paulson, is what Mr. Neese sent.
Right, well, I'm talking about what Jay said, that people using our campgrounds on a permanent or semi-permanent basis use our services, yet they don't pay for those services. So to be equitable for other second homeowners, we should consider looking at collecting a fee.
I agree. I mean, whatever, if they're using our our resources or whatever, we should get a fee out of it.
Right.
So,
Apparently, Mr. Neese had brought this, I guess it was in 2007, there was the subcommittee, because then he says down here 2017. I think it was 2007, then. That was prior to my time.
No.
But even at that time, the campground owners apparently had no issues with this. They did think 200 was maybe a little high initially. Maybe you start off at $100 permit and then continue if those services aren't being adequately taken care of. But yeah, I do see this as being something beneficial potentially here, so.
Okay.
oh yeah, I agree with that part of it too, but you know, I don't want to see where it's gonna be a hardship on your staff to take care of all this stuff.
Yeah, it wouldn't work with the staffing we have now. This would require an additional position, most likely in the form of an LTE that would be working for whether it's 4 or 6 months a year during the summer to actually make sure that these campgrounds are getting those sticker permits.
And I'm not sure if you're gonna be able to get that employee unless there's funds out there to fund that, like Rebecca was talking about. As right now, if we did do this, it's just, the money's not there to hire anybody.
But if we,
The money would be there.
it would be there. That's what
Well,
I'm thinking.
but not right away.
Well, I mean, if you implemented this and it said the stickers due June 1st, I mean, then we could hire the limited person June 1st and let them work for 4 months and go around the campgrounds and see if each of the campers has a sticker on it. And those that don't, then you fine them. Actually, you fine the campground owner possibly.
Yep. And the campground owners thought, this wouldn't be too much of an issue because they would just charge it back onto the person that was
Right.
renting the camp
Yeah.
site.
Okay.
Right.
Sounds good to me.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I
Yeah, go ahead.
So if you're gonna investigate this fee, Jay, are you gonna look at a way, like Bruce and some others have mentioned, that we could collect a fee even though they don't have a deck?
Yes.
Isn't that right?
Yeah, so I mean,
Yeah.
regardless of the deck issue or not, this would be for the actual camper. And again, this is early working stages of this. Obviously, I don't think we're gonna get anything in this year camp season. This would be something for 2021 camp
Right.
season. But yeah, there's a lot of things to look into, because I guess Phil has it broken down here for seasonal and not for year-long. And I questioned, well, why not the year-long ones? And he said there's state statutes that you can't do it for park model units because they're not roadworthy. So I have some investigating for that as well, as to why you're only doing it for seasonals and not those that would be parked there year-round.
Right.
And then he also wanted to make the distinction that it's only for those that are there over 30 days. So if you came up for a week at one of the campgrounds, you wouldn't have to pay this annual fee. But then I threw other loops at him. What if I come up, 2 weeks this month, 2 weeks the next month, 2 weeks the following month? Now I've been here for over 30 days, but not in consecutive time. So there's loopholes to figure out and the unintended consequences to look at here as well.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Oh,
Sorry, Jesse.
no, I'm sorry, I thought public comments were over.
Well, I'm gonna let her
Yeah,
talk.
okay.
Yeah, we allow, I think, in general practice,
Do-
to have public input on the agenda items, but I had general comments to make that overarched everything.
When you say we allow, what do you mean by we? Who's we?
You
Okay,
allow.
thank you, Ms. Sullivan.
Go ahead.
As far as investigating things, in Edgewater, the campgrounds have been a hot topic since the mid-1990s that I've been aware of. One question, and I've talked to different assessors about it and they have different opinions, is if I have a home, if I put a deck on my house, then my property value is increased and I have to pay more property, a higher share of property taxes. Same thing if I build a shed. So what's been happening in these campgrounds, this has been acknowledged, is we have decks. they have decks and they have sheds, and a lot of them exceed it, and if they were attached to a house, you would pay property taxes. So then my question also is, if these campgrounds now are having decks and sheds, are those accessible and taxable for property tax purposes? Is it to the campground owner, or is it to the individual person who might have that seasonal there all year round and that deck stays there all year round? Because I just would like to use this opportunity to find out if there is a mechanism by which Sawyer County can collect additional property taxes for those decks and sheds that sit on campgrounds, as if you would, a regular home.
Right, that's stated. Okay, Jesse, go ahead. You got something you want to say?
Well, it was just about first of all, I don't think we should have voted on that motion before we had discussion, but it sounds like we're having discussion now after we voted. I guess I'm not sure why there are just too many loopholes in there. I know we're going to find this in the investigation that Jay's going to, have to hire somebody else to take 4 to 6 months to conduct this investigation. But these people are already paying money to put their camper on this campsite to the campground or whatever. So it's not like they're not paying anything. They pay licensing fee and taxes on their own RV, and then they come here, they pay a certain amount to keep their camper on the campground. And now we're asking for additional money just because they're using our resources, our lakes or whatever. So again, if this is in place for 30 days or more, and I have an RV, which I don't, but I'm going to come there for 29 days and then I'm going to move somewhere else for the weekend. And then I'm going to come back and stay another 29 days. If it's, to avoid a $200 fee, which seems a little bit high to me, to just throw an additional $200 fee. And there's other people who come here and use our resources, whether they're camping in a tent or staying in a hotel or whatever, we're not throwing extra fees at them just because they're using our resources to go fishing on our lakes or to walk on the trails and stuff like that. So I just guess I don't understand, if it's just an arbitrary, hey, we're going to tax you guys $200 just because you're staying here because they're already paying money to come here. They're putting money into our economy. So I'm sure Jay will find this out in the investigation or the research into this, but I just wanted to put my comments out there.
Yeah, that's a good comment. Thank you.
And I appreciate the open dialogue of communication here. It makes my job easier when I go back and actually do this investigation. So that's why I wanted this discussion to occur, because otherwise it's, well, Jay, investigate this. Well,
Right.
give me some direction as to where you're actually wanting to go. One of the simple answers to your question is when people stay in hotel rooms or resorts, they're having to pay a room tax. When you stay at a campground, you're not having to pay a room tax. So there is a difference of distribution of fees back to the county in that aspect alone. Yes, the campground owner as a whole does pay licensing fee to DAGCAP, which we being the state agent for them, end up receiving those fees, but those are pretty small. I think they're probably less than $200-300 for the entire campground itself, depending on how many sites you have. Again, more investigation needs to be done. I'll come back with some of those figures and kind of lay some stuff out for you at that time.
Okay, anybody else? Okay.
Give me 1 second to write this down before I forget it. Okay, thanks. Moving on to the bunkhouse ordinance. This is for discussion or potential action to send to towns. We're now working on version 13.1 of this potential bunkhouse ordinance. This has received legal review as far as the merit of us being able to do a bunkhouse ordinance. At this point, our legal counsel hasn't done a full review of the actual text verbiage, but as a whole was basically granted approval that the county has the ability to pass a bunkhouse ordinance. We still have a few little things hanging out there that need some official direction as to where to go, specifically in what I'll call the bunkhouse sign or additional indicator that there may be someone sleeping in this bunkhouse. I did have a discussion with 4 of the town fire chiefs, and all of them had basically stated that they're wanting some indication at the driveway, as well as an indicator on the actual structure itself to denote that there might be someone sleeping within that structure. So we've gone the route of, okay, do we have a separate, so imagine your red fire number sign. Do you have a separate, indicator under it, whether it's a yellow strip of the same length that says bunkhouse? Is that going to look weird when you're driving around the county and seeing these red and yellow tags underneath them? Might be. So then we thought about, okay, what if we do our standard red bunkhouse sign, but then after the number, we make it a little bit longer and it has a separate symbol or indicator, whether it be a second little home icon or an asterisk, something that indicates that when that fire department goes in and they see the sign out at the driveway, that we need to be looking that there might be a secondary sleeping structure on the property. Not only at the road, but actually somewhere then affixed to that structure, whether it's, some type of reflector identifier that says bunkhouse or, something small that would indicate there might be someone sleeping in that structure. So we still have to address those issues as to, what indicator do we want to have? What's going to be, I guess, most visually appealing or aesthetically appealing, but still also give that sort of denotion to those fire departments. Other than that, again, we're working on version 13.1. Certainly, answer any questions that any of you may have or thoughts or suggestions, specifically, well, really on anything, but also including that bunkhouse sign. Other than that, if there was, discussion or I should say an action, I would hope it would somewhat be in the form that we have a full legal review of this potential ordinance amendment before sending it to towns. Like I said, I want to tread very light-footed on this ordinance in that, it's been several months in the making and I don't want it to all of a sudden just fall apart. So I do want to proceed cautiously on any type of adoption form with this. Again, coming into, late July here, this could be something that we could easily look at even passing late fall, winter, and then really at the start of 2021, be fully ready to go with something. So.
Go ahead, Mr. Bolton. Jay, other counties have similar ordinances?
Yes, there are a few that have bunkhouse ordinances.
How do they handle the sign issue? Have you talked to them?
They don't. Again, they've historically had it for a long time. They just allow bunkhouses. So I haven't had conversations with those other county fire chiefs as to whether or not that process is working. But looking at our own town fire departments, that was something that they were adamant for, is having some other type of separate
Right, I mean,
indicator that there's that.
to me, the indicator should be visible enough so if you're running by the building in a fire truck, you know exactly you've got 2 issues. You've got the main structure and the secondary structure. Putting a little A behind the fire number, may not be visible to those guys driving their trucks.
This is true. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, the fire numbers already are red.
I think we would want to go with a different color.
Right.
Yellow,
Yellow, green, blue, purple. I don't know if the color matters, but you do want to be a little bit forward thinking in that, you know, if you say, yeah, it's got to be yellow. I mean, do you want red and yellows stacked on top of each other and all of a sudden there's one. To me, it might be a little bit, I don't know, not aesthetically pleasing. You know, I
Let's
think
throw
ketchup
white in
and
there.
mustard all the time or something.
But we're talking about public safety.
Correct.
Isn't that the overriding issue?
It is, yep.
So,
And green was kind of struck out that you wouldn't want to have green because that could be hard to see with vegetation as well as, you know, your other road signs
Right.
are already green. So
yeah.
we didn't want to go green. We thought about blue, orange. I don't know if color really makes that much of a difference, to be honest, but
I mean, it should be visible and stand out is all I can say, because, you know, these fire guys, they come whipping around, you know, to get to a fire. I mean,
right.
I don't know, you've got a fire department down there.
Can I make a comment?
yes, go ahead, Miss Bennett.
I also believe we need to be, it either needs to be fluorescent, it needs to stand out, even if we need to somehow, I don't know, put stars next to it, so when they're driving, they shine the light, it's reflective or something, so they can see it, because the numbers are not reflective. So maybe that would stand out, that if there was a bunkhouse in there, if they had occupants, they shine it, it's yellow or it's orange, and maybe reflective or fluorescent, so they see it right away when they're pulling up to the home or the, you know, the structure. Or
Well, I
land.
believe now, any sign that you buy now is gonna be reflective. I believe
Okay.
that's the way they come.
So,
But are you wanting this committee to pick the color?
I think Jay should have the authority over that. He would know what would work on it. And if he's speaking with the fire department and EMT, the ambulance services, I'm sure they have what they would like, what they think is appropriate.
would it make sense to poll the fire department and get Dunster?
And
Nate and
Yeah, and
them?
I did, and they didn't really care as to what color it was. They just want to have some kind of indicator.
Right.
Not only at the road, but on the structure itself. And really, at the road was just to kind of prepare them to start looking for other structures. Obviously, if something's on fire, they're going to assess it and put it out. But if it is a garage fire and it looks like a garage fire, maybe they're, you know, have a separate walled off room in the garage that people are staying in, they would never know unless there was some other
Right.
indicator on that structure.
Right. They're not
Can
gonna
I
build
also,
a vacant building to fucking save a life.
Right, unless someone's out there screaming and yelling, I guess, but yeah, so that's where that whole concern has been is, you know, if there's a fire in this bunkhouse and that bunkhouse looks like some type of garage or accessory structure, they wanted an indicator on that actual
Right.
building.
Right.
And then that would be up to the property owner to, you know, because I don't really want to go out there and start screwing in a bunkhouse sign into someone's siding, so I'm gonna end up leaving that on the property owner. Right.
hang on, Miss Bennett, Mr. Schuman next year.
Well, I just had a concern, Jay. I wonder if this sign that's out at the fire number should somehow correlate to the sign that's on the bunkhouse too.
Right, and that's where we're looking, okay, if you have, you know, the same
So
length
the
as
fire
the
department or
fire.
EMS, no, they're looking for the same. You know what I mean? Because you could have a bunkhouse sign just made out of wood and fancy and couldn't see it at night, or you need a flashlight to find it.
Yeah, and the initial thought was, you know, if we carry the same length as the fire number signs, which I believe are 18 inches by 6 inches, then the next one underneath would say, you know, bunkhouse in yellow reflectant, and it would be 4 inches by 18 inches. And then we would have two of those. One of them that'd be affixed on the post, and then the other one
Perfect.
would be up to the property owner to affix somewhere onto that structure, or even pound another post next to the structure. Issues with pounding posts next to buildings, so it's probably want to make sure you know where all your lines coming into that building might be, so.
Sure.
Figures on one.
Yeah,
Okay, Miss Bennett,
my thinking was also, instead of doing the two signs out at the road, is there a way that when we could reissue just the address and maybe not a letter, or maybe something that goes with Sawyer County, I don't know, that promotes Wisconsin or whatever, you know, the flower or whatever, so it's more appealing, you know what I mean? Something like
Right.
that.
And that's what, that was the first kind of portion of the discussion. Do we want these yellow reflected signs that might be, somewhat visually not appealing, and have some other type of symbol? So basically you would take your standard fire number you have now, you'd have to get a replacement sign for it.
Right.
And, it would still be the same length and width, but instead of, 15629W, it'd be 15629W space and then some type of symbol, whether it's an asterisk
Right.
or a flower, or even a symbol of a little house.
Yeah.
Some kind of symbol that would denote that there's a secondary sleeping area on site. Again, and that's the question I'm going to throw back to the committee as to, what are your mindsets in that? What do you want to see? The fire departments were fine with either one, as long as there was, again, something affixed to the bunkhouse structure itself that also denoted that there might be someone sleeping in it. They weren't necessarily sold on that they need to have a big yellow sign out at the driveway, but just something at the driveway that would denote it, and then again, something on the structure.
So, I mean, I guess my recommendation is they're the experts. Let's let Nate and the fire guy say, this is what we would like.
Yeah.
And they didn't care. As long
But I
as,
believe there should be one on the structure. I do. Yeah.
Right.
So,
And
Go
my
ahead.
other question is are they being charged within the fee for the two signs that we're going to provide?
yes,
correct?
we're not going to take a loss on that.
Right.
We'll be net neutral on, the cost of the fabrication of the sign, as well as the office staff time it takes to process it, as well as the install. We'll be doing the installs at the road and then giving them their other sign so that they can affix to the structure. But yeah, there wouldn't be a revenue stream generated there, but nor would there be any loss. So typically we're around $100 to $125 for those additional signs.
Linda?
Thank you, Linda Zillmer. Just in listening to the conversation, I don't know if Jay's had a chance to consult with the county department that's in charge of the fire numbers. Fire numbers, our fire chief in Birchwood covers 4 counties, so he might be somebody to check from the fire department side because he deals with multiple counties. But I know some of the private roads we have multiple fire numbers on
Right.
one post, and so maybe our own county department would have some idea of things, suggestions, and what to do when those situations come up. Thank you.
And
And I
that
don't
is-
know, there also might be state restrictions on signage. I know I wanted to put up some, of course, there are regulatory signs, and I don't know if these aren't regulatory, but the state may have some requirements.
yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Paulson.
Jay, what are the fines going to be for non-compliance?
Right, we haven't settled fully on that. I know you had a suggestion of 5,000. I think that's a little steep for non-compliance on something like that. I haven't nailed down a number on that yet, nor is that amount included in the actual working ordinance. It would be something as far as an incorporation into the citation ordinance, which is another
Right.
ordinance amendment that is in process of getting updated internally at this point.
Why wouldn't we consider both of them? I mean, I would like to know what the fine is going to be for non-compliance. I mean, I think I said before, it's a safety issue.
Exactly.
And if you've got, we're saying we're going to give them 24 months to comply. And if people don't comply, I mean, we should set the structure up so that there's a substantial incentive to comply.
Mhm.
So I actually started low. I started at 5,000. I was hoping to go to 10.
I know our largest fee amount right now is $787.50. That's the largest one we have listed in our citation ordinance right now.
Right, we shouldn't be bashful, I don't think. And what about if I'm a contractor and I knowingly build a structure without a land use permit, like, you're saying here you have to have a land use permit for a bunkhouse.
Mhm.
And if I'm a contractor and my customer says, build me a bunkhouse, the contractor should say, okay, show me the land use permit. If they build it without a land use permit, there should be a penalty for them too.
Yeah, and we have taken both parties to court for citations in the past. Not only the owner of the property, which ultimately all the onus goes back on,
Right.
but also we have given a citation to the contractors that have knowingly gone against ordinance requirements. It becomes a little bit difficult in that, if a contractor built a two-story garage and left it unfinished, then either another contractor came in or the homeowner himself then did internal remodels to make it into habitable. The contractor could easily say, I did not sign up for that, I didn't do that, I just built a two-story garage, they told me it was going to be storage.
Right.
So at that point, they could easily just say, nope, it goes straight on to the owner. So it's hard, but yes, there has been circumstances where we've taken contractors to court as well.
Is that in the fine ordinance?
That'd be as part of the citation ordinance, yeah.
Okay, all right.
And that is certainly something, if that's barring, potential moving of this ordinance on through other, committees of jurisdiction, town reviews, we can certainly bring that citation ordinance back as well. But I mean, the citation ordinance, if we open the door on the citation ordinance, it would not be just to include bunkhouses. We'd be looking at an entire review of that citation ordinance, because I'm not going to bring an ordinance amendment for one little change in the citation ordinance. I'm going to bring a citation ordinance that's going to have 30 different changes in basically an entire rework of that ordinance. So
why can't we instruct you to set in the citation ordinance the fine for non-compliance should be, and then you put that in and redo the whole ordinance, and then.
Right, but do you want them held in conjunction, I guess is my question, because again, there's a lot of
Right.
different issues in the citation ordinance that need reworking than just the fee amount for non-compliance of secondary habitable structure.
Well, my recommendation is that we just settle on a fee not for non-compliance, and then give you the instructions to put it in the
Okay.
ordinance when the ordinance sees the light of day.
Good. If you want to discuss that amount, you certainly can.
Well, you said the highest fee right now, fine is what, $750?
$787.50.
$787.50?
Now, is that the highest non-compliance fine?
The non-compliance fine is probably actually lesser. The $787.50 would be for shoreline vegetation removal.
I mean, I think we should set the fine high enough to drive compliance. I mean, again, I don't want to be sitting here a year from now and there's a guy out there who doesn't comply, but we lost 4 lives.
Right.
I mean, that's my concern.
I think, either a $500 or $1,000 deposit, which is, how we end up listing our fee amounts. So this shoreline vegetation removal is actually a $500 deposit, but then there's other court fees and everything that's added onto it, so it becomes a total of $787.50 at the end of the day. But with those citations also come an order for removal deadline or order for correction deadline, and if it's not met by that order for correction deadline, then daily forfeitures come into play at $25 or $50 per day. So not only are you having to pay your $1,000 citation fee to begin with, if you go to court, fight it, and lose, after that final judgment date, you now are getting assessed a $25 or $50 daily forfeiture for every day it sits in violation. So that's what ends up really driving that stuff up.
Right.
Because I would still be doing that with a $5,000 citation as well. And ultimately, at $50 a day, it becomes pretty burdensome for someone to want to play that game.
If they don't comply.
Right.
Okay.
I guess my whole thought on that, and Mr. Paulson, you said 5,000, and Jay thought that was kind of extensive. What about 1,000? Okay, what do you think of that, Mr. Paulson?
I'm okay with 1,000.
Mr. Betcher?
I think even 500, in my opinion, is a little bit excessive. I mean, I understand there are some, long shot public safety concerns on a, 1 in a million chance that there's a fire there on the same night somebody's staying there. So not trying to downplay that, but it's pretty remote if we're looking at just a public safety thing. So I mean, when you compare it to other fines throughout the county for other infractions, not just, ordinance and zoning and stuff, but I mean, public safety stuff. I mean, 500 is a pretty hefty fine. I mean, what's a fine for public, or for OWI or something like that, I mean, that's up there, I'm assuming, I've never gotten one, but I'm assuming it's up in the 500 range.
Yeah.
Now, to me,
I'm not
that's
sure
a lot
what it is.
more
Yeah, probably a little
heinous
bit more.
and, public safety concern than a bunkhouse violation.
I would think speeding over 20, 25 miles an hour is probably, $500
Yeah,
ticket, which I would think is obviously a lot more endangering to
right.
the
So
public.
I mean, I would have a hard time going over a $500 fine, in my opinion.
Mr. Paulson?
Mr. Chairman,
Oh.
I think bunkhouses and temporary guest quarters, I think the people who have these or would build these would just sneeze at a $500 fine. I mean, I think you're seeing these mostly on lake properties of substantial value.
Yes.
So I think, I respect Ms. Jesse's comments, but I think it should be $1,000. Because, I mean, 500, what's going to be 500 for a guy with a $2 million house?
Right. It's not only the 500 though; it's the daily forfeitures that end up catching up with
Right.
people.
No, I understand.
And you're gonna have people out there that's gonna try to get around that. I mean.
Oh, absolutely. I have no doubts to that.
They will, but I'm in favor of the 1,000. Miss Patty, you got a comment?
No, I'm just sitting, listening, and I'm in agreement. 500 isn't enough. They'll just be like, yeah, whatever. We need to raise it.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
Briefly on the fee issue, the legal standard in setting a fee is it has to be reasonable. Certainly setting a fee is an exercise of the county's police power, which gives you great deference. But again, even under that deference and under the proper exercise of police power, it has to be reasonable. So in determining what is reasonable, certainly you can look to other fees, you can look to other counties, you can look to all of the different circumstances that you're discussing today.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead.
A side issue from this is whether the county should take over the uniform dwelling code inspections. And I guess I'd hate to lose that initiative, I guess what I'm trying to say is that in addition, we should be looking at the county taking over the uniform dwelling code.
And I agree with that. The county should take over the uniform dwelling codes.
Right. So, I mean, it just, I'm putting it on the table not to hold up progress on this, but just that's a future item that should go on the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, and that is one of the other questions that are still out there for this ordinance is, really the only way this ordinance works is that there is some type of UDC, Uniform Dwelling Code inspection on these quote unquote bunkhouses.
Right.
Whether they're new ones being built or whether they're after the fact Uniform Dwelling Code sign-offs on existing. The only way that works is that the towns end up basically contracting or requiring their Uniform Dwelling Code inspector to do those actual inspections. For after the facts, they become a little bit more difficult, certainly. That is where this whole process ended up stemming, that if we can't get each town to say, okay, yeah, we'll redo our contract with our UDC inspector and have them, actually do requirements for not only after the facts but existing, that's where the method or the mindset came, okay, well, what if we took it back over at a county level and we did the UDC inspections at a county administered point? And yeah, I do have some other information on that topic. I know Bruce and I have been in discussions with that. I'm not sure if that's a discussion we want to have here today or not, or if it would even come to this committee, but.
Right. If I can make a recommendation.
Mr. Schuman?
Is the UDC code part of agent of the state also, Rebecca?
Whether it would be an agent of the state under DSPS, which is the Department of Safety and Professional Services. So yes, it's an agent of the state function, but under a different legal umbrella than other agency of the state.
So we could get funding for this person and could go out and be an inspector, possibly?
Funding, I'm not
Agent of the state.
sure about.
A big possibly with an asterisk.
Yeah.
That's something we'd have
Because
to
I see these
look at.
have to be without plumbing and, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So you gotta look for that. and-
Right.
Well, my thinking, Tweed, would be that we would set the inspection fees high enough to help pay for our administrative costs and also pay for the inspector themselves. So,
Similar to the water testing and sanitary.
yeah.
So, to give a kind of brief overview of the Uniform Dwelling Code, I'm not sure what year it ended up, kicking in. It was sometime, I think, in like the early 80s, even late 70s. But the state basically said that you need to do Uniform Dwelling Code inspections on all new 1 or 2 family dwellings. That was their minimum that they set. Basically, then, if you didn't provide that service at a county level, nor at a town level, that the state would end up appointing a Uniform Dwelling Code inspector to actually do those inspections for you. But that was only on 1 or 2 family new dwellings. If the county assumed responsibility or the towns assumed responsibility, they then could contract out with their own Uniform Dwelling Code inspector and could have other sets of requirements as to what they're checking beyond the 1 and 2 family dwellings. So they can inspect additions over a certain amount of square feet. They can inspect garages. They can inspect bunkhouses. When that whole thing came about in Sawyer County, I again don't know the years. It's going to be back in the 80s somewhere. Each individual town ended up wanting to do their own Uniform Dwelling Code inspections. Again, we don't have any type of uniformity really across town lines in that, town of Bass Lake requires inspections on additions over 500 square feet but doesn't inspect garages. Town of Round Lake doesn't inspect additions over 500 square feet but does inspect garages. So there's really no uniformity across town lines. There's only been a few other counties that have, even attempted to take back administration from the town levels, and really, from what I've seen, and this is more of a question for legal, it's going to require a resolution signed by both the town and the county for that individual town to basically relinquish that power and give it back to the county. So at what point, if we have 15 towns that we would have jurisdiction for zoning or that Uniform Dwelling Code inspection on. If we get 5 of them, does it make sense to administer it at the county level? If we get 7 of them, does it make sense to administer it at the county level? So that I don't think all the towns are going to give this back up. At least from the initial poll I'd done, 5-6 months ago, it didn't sound like all of them were on board with this process. So where's that break-even point as to, does this even make sense to go down this route? That's something for someone that's got a larger brain than I can figure out for that money aspect side of things, so whether or not we even break even on something. So.
Well, Jay, I just will throw this out there. I mean, our township has a inspector. And since I've been reviewing this thing, and I talked to my town clerk, we don't even have a contract with him. So I don't understand how he got to be our inspector. Nobody can tell me. So I just wanted to throw that out there to you. So
Okay.
I'm still trying to figure out how it is.
Yeah, it might be a state assigned one then at that point, where they only inspect the 1 or 2 family new dwellings. Or if the town didn't sign a contract to do more, it's basically the state appointed person, And because there's a state certified UDC inspector in your region, most likely Troy Kadlashek, he's probably doing your inspections.
No, his name is Monty.
Oh, you got Monty.
Allers.
Yep, you got Monty Allers.
Yeah, so anyway, yeah, I could say that I talked to the clerk and her and I, we went through the stuff, we can't find no contract on
Yeah.
that, so.
Okay. So where are we on this draft here? Do you,
Well, I guess it would be at least guidance from this committee as to, what ultimately do you want to see for a bunkhouse sign? I can see both of the options working, whether it's a separate yellow sign underneath. In the situation where you have multiple signs on one post, they're just bolted on, so you could unbolt them, shift everything down, and slide that yellow indicator under that next one. Again, red, slice of yellow, red. Does that look weird coming down, or fire chief's even going to know that yellow means that, or do you look at having some other type of symbol on what is the now commonly recognized fire number?
Good.
Mr. Chairman, I'm dodging this a little bit, but I think what kind of sign is not policy. I mean, I think our policy should be that there should be a sign, and how the sign is designed and developed. I don't think that's the role of this committee.
No.
I wanted to have it buttoned up because if we get down the process with towns or it goes through the public hearing process, that's going to come up and, I thought it was going to be a purple sign and, green would be a better color. I don't want a different color out there. I like my red one that I have. So I was hoping for some kind of guidance from this committee as to maybe what your thoughts were without, polling a large group of people just to see at least, if the committee had backing with some type of color and or arrangement of that sign.
Well, like I say too, and I just said this, that we need to also put one on the dwelling.
Yep.
And the color has got to be something that can be seen. When these guys are coming in, whoever that might be, they come in there at a pretty good clip. So they need something that sticks out there to them and shows what this is. My favorite color would be yellow.
Yeah, and yellow I don't think is the most obtrusive color out there, especially in the summer. There are a lot of yellow naturally in nature in the summer, whether it be flower color, dandelions, whatever it may be. You see yellow throughout the county already.
So could we just ask the zoning administrator to come back with a recommendation?
Sure.
Yeah, and I did talk with our GIS technician who, not only does the ordering of them, but, does the actual installs of them. He was fine with either one. He talked to his sign guy, the one that we get the signs from. It was actually the sign guy that had, mentioned the symbol portion on the fire number. The commonly read fire number is the symbol. So that's what started this whole other mindset. Well, hey, man, that's not a bad idea. So.
I think the symbol is not the best idea because then you're going to have what marking it on the bunkhouse because you need a separate marking on the actual house itself. So I think they should be
two of the
universal, the same, whatever it is. I like your idea of the same width of the sign, whether that's 16 inches or 18 or whatever, in about 4 inches. I think that's a great idea. The color, I think either yellow or orange, but they're the exact same. And it says bunkhouse.
Yep.
And so that's hanging right below the fire number on the same post, can't be on a different post. And then that same exact sign, size, dimensions, color, somewhere probably affixed to the actual bunkhouse.
And if they wanted to pound a stake right next to their building because they didn't want to screw it into the siding, so be it. It's right next to the structure. That would be fine for me as well. So. But that's up to them to install that. So that was the other thing is, you know, is the county going to go in there and, like I said, screw stuff into someone's siding? Well, no, they'll receive that sign, and it's really up to them per ordinance that they affix it or
Right.
yeah,
Just
immediately
stick it to
adjacent to the
Yeah,
structure.
just like your sticker for your license plate.
Right.
You know, the state doesn't come out and put that on there. It's
Yeah.
up to me to clean it appropriately and put it on there. And,
Right.
You know, not upside down. So yeah.
You clean it? I just stick it right back on all the other ones.
So yeah, I don't think it should be on the actual existing fire number with a symbol or anything like that.
Right.
It needs to be a separate sign, an identical one on the actual bunkhouse. And that's my recommendation. And either yellow or orange would be my recommendation.
I think I agree with that.
Yeah, I like that too. I think that works better as well.
Do we need that sign decision before we send this to the towns?
No, but I would like a full legal review prior to sending it to towns. Just how we had actually done the last item on the agenda, that we, you know, want the legal review prior to it going to towns.
Okay, I agree with that.
I
It
do
should be
too.
reviewed then.
Right, so then it'll be back on next month's agenda for review of any legal suggested changes.
Yep,
And
with the
then-
discussion, with potential action to send to towns for review.
Okay.
And then you can pick out yellow or orange, Jay. Go ahead, Rebecca.
So as we're sitting here, I just started reviewing it, and I just have a couple questions that if the committee could give me some direction on. The draft references the bunkhouse temporary guest quarters agreement. And we had talked about that at the last zoning meeting. And there was some discussion about, you know, talking with other stakeholders and so forth. The concern I have with that is, you know, A, what is the agreement gonna look like? B, are we gonna have issues of owners not wanting us to record that agreement in the chain of title? I'm always concerned about potential slander of title arguments. So is that something that, you know, the committee is committed to in having that agreement recorded in the chain of title, or you know, a separate agreement that is just between, that is not recorded in the chain of title? So rather than just putting this in my comments in my review, if we can, it'd be helpful if we could work through that now and decide that. I mean, if you do want it in the chain of title, I can revise it to make sure that it is, that we have the appropriate provisions in terms of releasing that agreement upon sale or transfer, you know, and other legal points that would address the concerns regarding slander of title. So,
Sure.
you want to just give me some direction whether you want it or
And I'll
not?
just give a little background before that. You know, there was three authors of this draft, myself included, and they had initially put in that, you know, we wanted some type of affidavit that was recorded on the deed that basically either showed new buyers coming in, especially with those that are, you know, existing bunkhouses that are out there now, is to have some type of affidavit that is recorded on the deed that does specify that there is a bunkhouse located on that property. Now, could there also be a separate document that releases that affidavit or that agreement? Well, yes, if they remove the actual bunkhouse with zoning verification, we could release that document as well. So hopefully that slander of title issue, you know, doesn't come about. But we use affidavits on other aspects that we record with the Register of Deeds all the time, whether it's a shoreline protection agreement because they did some special project that required additional vegetation requirements. We have a affidavit that we record right now where someone had an existing small cabin. They didn't necessarily want to fully tear down that structure. They wanted to build a new house. We have a document that basically switches the habitation in that structure to accessory use only. So now they can't use it for sleeping and need to pull the plumbing out of it. So we record that document on the deed so new buyers coming in and say, oh, there's a little guest cabin. Well, no, that's an accessory use cabin or accessory use structure now at this point. So we do have several affidavits that are out there. I don't have one tailored for this scenario yet, but it wouldn't take me more than a day or two to draft something.
Okay.
I would want, obviously, legal review on said document, but as long as it's a recordable document, I don't think Register of Deeds really cares what's on it. I would just want to make sure that it meets legal merit. But again, that document's not out there yet, but it was a document that the initial drafters of this document, or the authors of this draft wanted included in there.
And what I can do then is take that and that intent and that policy intent and just make sure that we have the language that would make it appropriate to do that.
Yeah.
So I can do
Yeah,
that.
yeah, no, that's fine. Okay,
Okay.
so,
I don't know if we need a motion for it or not.
Well, we didn't do a
potential
motion
action,
on the
so-
other one,
right.
it's just potential action, so
yeah.
we'll just put it on next month.
Do you want to do it like you did for the last one? Make a motion for legal review and then to bring
Oh,
it back next
yeah, we
month.
did do that, okay.
Okay. I'll make a motion to submit this draft to, for legal review and have it returned or back on the agenda for August.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor to have the draft look for legal review. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries.
All right, next item on the agenda, this was added after the publication had gone out, so this is just for discussion under new business, but this is for the zoning committee bylaws. Rebecca's been working on this, and I think we got a pretty good working version. Again, this is just discussion only at this point because it wasn't published. So if there are any questions or issues or anything that anyone sees in the bylaws, ask them to Rebecca because she drafted it. And this would be something hopefully we can get ironed out and bring back to committee next month for discussion, action to send to county board for approval, resolution approval.
I have one question. On 3.23, Spider Lake does its own zoning. District 12 includes Spider Lake. Does the working mean that the District 12 supervisor cannot be on the zoning committee? It says here, according to this draft, yes, this is a policy decision for the CZC and the board. Rebecca, we're gonna throw that at you.
Yep, no, that's good. Cause in answering that question, I know that, when the committees were selected, Chairman Schuman and I had this discussion in terms of the zoning committee members having to be from districts that are represented by, or that are impacted by the decisions of this committee, i.e. they don't have their own zoning code, or zoning ordinance. And Town of Spider Lake, again, it's my understanding that they do have their own zoning ordinance. So if District 12 includes Spider Lake, we need to address that. In looking at and that's why I asked Kathy for the existing bylaws. I'm looking in the existing bylaws for the provision regarding that policy. Because we need to make sure that it's addressed.
Well,
now
whether
and
it's
consistent
existing
now.
or not, we could always add it. It's always been kind of the understanding. Isn't that one of the reasons why we don't allow city
Right.
district
Correct.
on here as well?
And tribal.
And tribal,
We
right.
have-
Right,
Right.
yes.
But
It doesn't exactly say city or
Right.
tribal, but it does say,
Well, in a way,
shall be an elected representative of a district that is subject to the jurisdiction of the county and.
Oh, so we need to,
County's
the
own
district
board.
number's wrong then.
no.
No. She's
So
12.
the concern that I have is Dawn, you represent District 12, correct?
Dawn, are you on there?
I think she does.
She's on, but she's on.
She is District
She's on
12.
mute.
Is there,
No, I'm still here.
Dawn, are there other municipalities in District 12 besides the town of Spider Lake?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Okay, so I think that that's something that we
Yeah.
need to look at.
right.
Yeah, we can look at that. So certainly you can make a revision in the revised bylaws. But if it's.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead.
I need to exit out. Thank you this morning, gentlemen, and Rebecca and Linda. I will see you at the next meeting.
Okay, Dawn.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
What's the goal here? Isn't the goal to have people on this committee that are not totally, let's say, totally within the town of, the city of Hayward? I mean, we've got 2 representatives from the city of Hayward. They have their own zoning, then they should probably not have the right to rule on other county zoning since they have their own zoning. And tribal members, same way. Tribal members, I would say, living on the reservation.
Correct.
Same way. But if somebody's district includes Spider Lake for a little bit, but they have a bunch of other towns and I guess, I'll say towns, but we don't do towns, do we?
Right, it would be.
Well, yeah, I guess we do
Yeah.
towns, not incorporated villages and things. So, I mean, that's really what my view of the intent is. So that's what this should say, is that if you're from, it doesn't say incorporated, unincorporated areas of
Well, I mean,
county.
does it matter where you live or what district you serve?
I'm going with the district. I mean, you gotta live in your district.
Right.
Right.
And if I lived in the village of Coudray, which we don't have zoning jurisdiction in, but the village of Coudray includes the town of Coudray
Right.
and a portion of the town of Ojibwa, I would think that member, being a
Right.
constituent or servicing their constituents, should be allowed on this committee.
Right. It's really the unincorporated areas of the county.
Right.
Maybe a term like solely.
Solely, sure. Solely representative of of the city, or solely representative of the town of
Reservation or
Spider
the
Lake.
city.
Right.
Yeah, I think
That's a good start.
that's a very good idea, because then it addresses the policy concern that Mr. Paulson
But,
does.
Well, that's exactly true, because I'm town of Hayward representative, but I have a portion in the city.
right. Yeah, so,
Yeah, because you're gonna exclude a lot of,
Right? Yes, it
Right.
does.
many
Our
board
districts
members
cover a lot of area,
Right.
being able to serve us.
which might include areas that are not
But
affected
solely
by
is the
this
key
zone.
word.
right.
Exactly.
Now, Susie represents District 4, right?
Right.
Now, that includes some reservation, some non-reservation. So if we say
But her residence
she's
is on the
a
reservation.
reservation.
Right, and the residents, that's not a concern, because you're still servicing constituents from non-reservation, correct?
Right, but didn't we
Correct.
take Ms. Taylor off of this committee because,
We did.
Because she was
And the
a
same
tr-
with Mark.
reservation.
Mark's in the city,
Is his whole district?
just about the whole, I
exclusively?
think the whole
Okay,
district is a city.
got it.
Maybe we need to bring out that district map again and with a fine tooth comb and look at
Right.
where those boundaries really hit then.
Yeah, no, I looked at District 4, and it kind of goes up past the reservation, they kind of got a dog leg or a handle going left and right. So solely will do it, but then that says we can allow tribal members who are representing a district that has other than reservation on this committee, and actually, Brian Bissonette was on this committee, I thought, for a while. And he was, and Susie Taylor replaced him.
Correct.
So, what do we feel about that?
Well,
I'm not, I, like the reservation, I'm a firm believer in there that they should not still sit on this committee.
Yeah, okay. So then we need to craft the language here that would say that, I guess.
Right, but then that's gonna leave what we're talking about here now with District 12 rep. I have one other problems with this, but it's something I don't want to bring up here
Okay,
in open session.
all right, that's fair.
So I guess we need to decide about how we want to do this then. I guess is what we're trying to do. Do we, as it looks right now, she can't be on this committee.
I'm not sure I quite read it that way, but,
No.
I mean, don't. I mean,
Again, this is the revision
right.
already, which isn't been approved. So it's, if we approve this, well then, yeah, that has some implications with her being on here, but we're looking at making that change.
Well, then, what's our goal? To exclude supervisors that represent solely incorporated areas of the county.
It would be areas that don't fall under county zoning jurisdiction.
Right, well, we just say
So it'd be
unincorporated.
city, town of Spider Lake,
Represents.
So,
reservation, and incorporated areas, villages.
right. But, so that would exclude the two districts within the city of Hayward, because that's solely.
Yep.
But tribal members living on the reservation also represent,
Right,
others that are off the reservation.
If their
Yeah.
district goes outside of the reservation boundary, then yeah, because you don't want to start really confiding or having an exclusive group, because you'll never find members to be on this committee in the future, so.
Right,
True.
so, I mean, it's really,
And they represent all those people.
Right.
right,
Yeah.
And even in the reservation boundary, there are still non-tribal members that have private residences in those
Right.
areas
but there's
That
some-
are subject to.
that are
county
subject to
zoning
county
ordinances.
zoning, because county zoning
That's a good
ordinance only affects those lands that are within the reservation boundary and are owned by tribal members. At that point, then we don't have jurisdiction. But if you're in the reservation boundary and you're not a tribal member, you're still subject to Sawyer County zoning regulations.
Yeah.
So,
Excuse
are
me
we
for a
okay
minute.
then just excluding the representatives that are solely within incorporated areas? That would be the city of Hayward.
I agree with you, Bruce. I guess if, say like Susie Taylor, for instance, she represents outside of the reservation too, right?
Right.
Correct.
So I guess we could put that in where if they represent other areas other than that they could be on zoning.
Yeah,
Like
just like
everybody,
District
Jay
12.
says, I mean, it's hard to
Yeah.
get people to sit on this committee. I don't know why, I mean, I love it, but, so, I guess I would be okay with that.
So drafting it that way. making
Yes.
Sure it does. I'm too.
Yep.
Mr. Betcher, you got any questions you wanna throw out there?
I mean, it just sounds a little wordy, maybe just be specific, like whatever, those two districts are that are fully within Hayward, is that,
Six, and I think it's six,
yeah.
I mean, 6 and 7.
6 and 7. So maybe just put District 6 and 7. Yeah, because I mean, Susie's is, half of Bass Lake, Ward's 3 and 4,
Right.
and Dawn's is not just
Not just Spider Lake, no,
it's
right,
also a portion of Round Lake
yep,
Right.
and
Winter,
and Winter.
yep,
So I don't think that those should be omitted.
Right.
But I understand with districts 6 and 7.
Yeah,
But to avoid the confusion about
Yeah.
what, maybe just put in there, hey, if you're in this district, if you represent this district, then you're not, should not be a primary member of the zoning.
Well, then that would just make it easier for like whoever, you know, like Tweed and whoever, you know, when they're picking their, for this, then they know that that people can't sit on this committee.
Yep.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, I think that's a good idea. Well, I think, you know, this discussion has good ideas. One thing I don't think it needs to be referenced specifically in the bylaws as to what the legal justification is for picking that District 6 and 7, but we'll have that in the file, because there could be arguments of equal protection by the county, you know, excluding certain districts and so forth. So I'll make sure that we have that. I don't think it needs to be in this document, but I will address that briefly.
I guess I would just also mention that if there are any other changes that this committee has to these bylaws, please get it to us within the next week, because we would need to have a clean working version by the 29th of July in order to get out for publication, as to reference it for ordinance. Well, yeah, ordinance amendment is technically a bylaws amendment, if you will.
Well, those were my concerns. That's the ones I noticed, you know, but,
I have some, can I just go through them?
yes, you can. Go ahead, Mr.
Okay.
Paulson.
Page 2, I think we got a section reference that's missing.
Yep, we'll fill that in
Okay.
when our draft is completed, because a lot of times section numbers will change.
All right, and then I'm looking at 3.1, parent 1, parent D.
Mhm.
Isn't that really the same as II in section C? That says here and decide applications for conditional use and special use, and this one says review and take action on application for conditional use permits. I mean, isn't that one and the same?
Decide. Well, I think, yeah, certainly, I think it's hitting the same intent. And I think where that came from is, because I used the existing bylaws as the
Right.
starting place, and I think that is just a duplication.
Right, and the existing
Yeah.
bylaws were not particularly well crafted.
Right, so what I'll do is combine those two, because I want to make sure we hit on that.
Make sure you get the action in there though too.
Right, exactly, that it has to hit on
Right.
the public hearing under 5969-5E,
Sure.
reviewing, taking action, so all of those verbs that you do are in there. So yes, I will revise that.
And then page 3, paren 2, item A. Okay, the second line, it says, and make draft, is that right?
That's an error, yep,
Okay,
and, yeah.
whatever the word is, I don't know. Okay,
Yeah.
same section. In E, we say county's development plan. Why wouldn't we call it the comprehensive plan? That's the same thing, isn't it?
Under the statutes, it's referred to as the county's development plan. That's why I cite it as that
Right.
here. But we can,
We could just say paren comprehensive plan, close
yep,
paren.
in the definition section, I can make a reference that
Right.
I can say comprehensive plan
Sure,
and have the definition say, is equivalent to the county development plan per
yeah,
WSTAT
right.
5160.
I mean, we all
Okay.
understand it as, the comprehensive plan.
Sometimes the statute also uses, for a zoning committee, it calls it the county, I think it's the county development agency, which makes no sense, but that's what the statute.
We don't
Plan
have
commission.
we don't
It
have
makes
a zoning
no
and
sense.
planning. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Same
not a
page,
region.
same page, little I. I mean, I think the Wisconsin Fund is really money to help citizens build new pouts and things like that. I mean, I think that really is a land and water issue, not really a zoning issue. I mean, I think Land and Water really has oversight over the POUT guys and whether we're up to date and things like that. I mean, I'm not fussing, but
Yeah, I'm not sure if it does. I mean, Land and Water, the only reason that zoning is brought into Land and Water is because it's zoning and conservation.
right.
Zoning historically has always been land use as well as sanitation. So I would actually think that it would be this committee that would hear any Wisconsin Fund appeals. Now, in the grand scheme of things, are you going to ever see a Wisconsin Fund appeal here?
No,
Probably.
no. So what about POUTs and the Carmody system, and that's really this committee's responsibility?
Should be, yeah. Yeah, because it falls strictly under zoning. If I wasn't a combined department, I wouldn't be bringing any information to Land Water.
Okay,
It
all
would
right.
just be the conservation side of things.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have a problem, I just want to get it right. I mean, if this committee wants to do POUTs and things like that, yeah, then that's fine,
Yeah.
just so we know.
This committee did hear when we went through our private on-site wastewater treatment system
Right.
ordinance back in 2010, 2011. It was this committee of jurisdiction that ended up approving that.
Okay. Then, can I go on?
Real quick on the fund appeals, that's a leftover from the last
Right.
bylaws. And I'm not aware of any legal requirements that it have to be here or it have to be
Right.
land and water, so
I
it's,
mean, I
it's
don't-
totally up to you.
I personally don't care, I mean, as long as we discuss it, we agree, and then
Right.
we move on.
Yep.
Okay, I'm on page 4.1, parent 1. Could we, I mean, the zoning committee elects their chairman the first meeting following when the county board approves the committee assignments. Is that right?
Yes. The reason these are blank is because, do you want me to use the board policy language? Or the Board of Supervisors rules or policies and procedures language, the
Yeah.
board rules. I can take the language directly from there, or I can use more specific language that's in the statute. They're both consistent, but it was a question of what language do you want me to use?
I prefer just simple language, whatever is simplest.
Whatever's
Okay.
easiest, yes.
All right.
Okay. Then I'm on page 6, 4.3. We don't elect a secretary, do we?
No.
No. How about if we say something about the zoning administrator shall appoint a secretary subject to the approval of the zoning committee?
Yeah.
And then,
You could just write in Kathy in there.
pardon me? Yeah, but Kathy, you could insult Kathy, she could get up and quit, then we'd have to change the bylaws.
She's going to be here
No.
forever.
Yeah, that's what he tells me.
Right, but I mean,
Not letting
that's,
it leave.
that's the way we've operated, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you've always
it's always
appointed-
been the deputy
Right.
zoning administrator, which previously was Cindy Yackley's title,
Right.
which now is Kathy March's title.
Right.
But yeah, I like the language that you had at first used, that the zoning administrator would appoint one,
Right, subject to the.
subject to
approval.
the zoning committee approval.
Okay. Okay, then on same thing, 4.3, only on D, do we record the addresses of all the people speaking before this committee?
When they give them, Kathy jots them down, but sometimes, that's hard when they, ramble real quick.
Right. Is it, do we need the addresses or just their names?
That'd be a legal question. I'm not sure of that.
There's no legal requirement for address, like specifically in the statute. However, when you're creating your record, it is helpful to have the addresses of individuals.
Okay, so then we should start asking where they don't give addresses. Addresses to me would be, 8518 N Hilltop Road, Hayward, or is it just adequate to say Town of Hayward?
Doesn't matter to me. I'm not
Doesn't
even,
matter to me either.
like I said, I'm not familiar with the statutes as to,
I would
why they
just-
would even need to have their address. I mean, do they have to be
No,
invested in the county in order to speak at a public hearing?
no, absolutely not.
Right.
But again, from creating the record standpoint, if a reviewing court is looking at this, they're gonna wanna see where the comments came from and who they came from, because that then drives whether the committee's decision was reasonable.
Mhm.
So again, not a legal requirement per se in the statutes, it's just a helpful tool for you in defending your decisions.
Okay, so then we should be asking, yes, ma'am.
And I have a question, you know, like now when I do minutes and stuff, I'll go, and Linda always says, you know, property owner,
Edgewater.
in Edgewater and stuff like that, and Phil Neese, Bass Lake, and sometimes he'll say what he is on the board, if he's on the board and stuff. But is that
I think that's
enough?
sufficient, yeah.
Is that sufficient?
Yeah.
Okay.
If we have a very
All right.
contentious case, I mean, it's the chair has always said, please state your name and address, and we try to jot them down as best we can, but sometimes they, you know,
Right, yes.
Jake Kozlowski, 13160, you know, W. Carter Lane. What did you say?
Yeah, time out.
So,
Just look them up in the phone book.
right. there you go.
Rebecca, is there any legal constraints with asking somebody to provide their address? I mean, if they don't want to, I mean, they should be allowed to come here and speak publicly.
Yeah.
And not necessarily be anonymous, but if they're like, hey, I don't, you know, I'm in a public open hearing here, I don't necessarily want to reveal my address to whoever's listening on the internet and everything else. So maybe what we could do is just word it like, record the names and addresses if provided. Meaning if they give that information, then yeah, we'll record it. But I don't think it should be required for them to provide their address. I don't.
No, I think that's a really good question. And I think that, again, it's not a legal requirement that the address be included. It's a helpful
Right.
tool for us to defend
Right, I understand.
Is it-
So, yeah, we'll record their name and address if
it's
they-
provided.
If
Right.
provided, if they
Yeah.
give it to us, then yeah, we'll record it. But if
Right.
they don't, then we're not gonna demand that they give it to us.
Exactly. In a public hearing, yes, anybody can speak, and you're certainly not prohibited from speaking if you don't want to give your address. Absolutely, that's
Right.
right.
Or if you don't even live
Right.
in the county,
Right.
like we saw last night.
hmm
So then it's addresses if provided or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good solution. Record the names and addresses, and then open parens if provided. I do think you need people's names.
We need
Oh, yeah,
names,
I don't
definitely.
think so, any doubt.
So then that if provided would just modify the addresses.
Well, we
Okay.
can ask them for their address. If they give it, they give it. If they don't, they don't.
Right.
Right, but it's not a requirement of our
Right.
bylaws,
Yeah.
that's really what I'm trying.
Okay.
On page 7, 5.6D, once in a while, the chairman shirks his duties, and the vice chair has to do all of this. So could we say providing officer?
I think we have another section in here that says that the vice chair performs when the chair can't.
Then we're okay, huh?
So then you just, if the chair is not here, you just
Okay.
plop in vice chair.
All right, well,
Vice chair assumes all duties.
Yep,
let's
exactly.
hope that never happens. Okay, page 8, 6.12A, second line,
6.2. I'm sorry, Bruce. can you say that?
6.1, parent 2, A.
A, okay.
Second line, it says A.
Hey,
Is this a Canadian?
hey,
Hey, yeah. Come on, Jay, you were supposed to pick up with
hey.
these. Yep.
Okay, and then
Bob.
9, page 9, 6.31, the last line, it must be signed by the
Yeah.
application. Is it the fee simple owner? Is that what we want, Jay?
If an applicant is not the fee simple owner of the property that's subject to the application,
Not me.
the property?
Yeah,
is in the
that's, we need the
application?
other,
The property owner?
let's see.
Well, we say fee simple in line above.
Right.
Probably want to repeat that.
If the applicant is not.
I think this is supposed to, so the applicant,
So this is where we get
okay.
the issues where it's being purchased on a contingency. That
I will buy this property if it's rezoned, I'm acting as the agent, but the original owner of the property is still the one needing to sign for the application. So I don't know if I'd even call them an applicant at that point, because we wouldn't allow them to be an applicant unless they were the fee simple owner of the property. They'd most likely be considered then an agent.
But you also have situations, let's just use a campground situation. You could have an operator of a campground that's not the owner. Even if it's the same, let's say that I'm the operator and my LLC owns the real property. So there is an affiliation. And I think the intent of this, and it's missing a word, is that if the applicant, you know, as we define in the first section, is not the fee simple owner, then the representative or the fee simple owner has to sign it. And I think that is a good thing, because what if you're making a decision based on the assumption that this person owns it, and then you render your approval, and then all of a sudden the owner comes back and says, what the heck did you do?
Right.
I never signed off on this.
Right.
So,
So we need to clean it up again.
yep, I think it needs to just fix the typo, say the fee simple property owner must sign the application.
Jay, you okay with that?
Yeah,
Okay.
Because that's how you have it now, right?
we always require owners'
Mhm.
original
Yeah.
signatures
Yeah.
on documents like those.
Okay, then I'm on page 11, at the bottom, D, little I that was struck. Don't we want the towns to provide the findings of fact?
Which one are you on?
Page 11, D
Bottom.
on the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
you've got red lined out the two little I.
I have not seen that.
I'm, this is who I am.
Oh, it's on page 12. Turn the page and it's on the
Page
back.
12 on this.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, I got what I printed off, actually what you sent me.
What I sent you, yeah.
This was, this was just something that was requested. I mean,
Right, well, I mean, I'm asking the committee, is it important to know why the towns accepted or rejected the,
I believe we want to know that.
I thought we did, yeah.
Yes.
it could be, if the concern is a form, you could just say the town shall provide findings of fact.
I guess the wording to me is not that critical, it's just, we want to make sure that we get from the towns why they denied or approved a request. At least I do.
We do.
I mean, do you want to keep all of that info be?
No, I don't think so. But I have a question on IV. Jay, aren't there circumstances when we must follow the town's decision?
IV, the decision of the city or the village may be considered?
No, the decision of the town may be considered, but I thought,
Yeah.
Oh, back here.
I thought there are times when we could not overrule a town.
Well, you still have to hold a public hearing, but there are state statutes that when a town denies a rezone, that you can't process the rezone.
So should we say something like, we say the decision of the town may be, but, I mean, we are bound by some, aren't we?
There is, yeah, and we can have Rebecca
you
look for
are.
the statute number, but there are provisions where if a town denies a rezone,
Yes.
that it cannot be rezoned.
Right.
And I think in the way that I would interpret that is the town may be considered, if it's legally prohibited, if it's legally required, that you have to make that, if you have to consider, you can't overrule the town's decision, that would trump this provision. But certainly we can, because this obviously can't trump the statutes.
Because
But we
I
can
know
make that clear.
usually, and a lot of times when we make our decisions, it's based off what the town tells us.
Right, right. But there are times when we have to follow the town's decision. I think we should clean up the language.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think,
Add that in and then clean it up.
yeah.
I would like it added
Okay.
back in and
Okay.
cleaned up. Is that okay with you guys?
Yes.
Now that I'm looking at this here too, I would like that second
sentence where we talked about the town should provide a form of the findings of facts. I do like that second line there as well.
Yeah.
The decision should be
By the
signed by
town
the town
board
board
members.
members and assisted by the town clerk.
I mean, you want it signed by all the town board members or just the clerk?
I
No,
would
I
really
just-
like it signed by the town board members because, I mean, that's just our paper trail to make sure that they've actually held that hearing and they were there present and voted on it.
Okay, all right, well, yeah. I mean, if that helps, yes.
Got it.
And I'm almost done, 2 more pages. Page 9, I'm on page 19, I don't know what your page numbers are, but it's section 10.1, 2,
Yep, staff report.
Okay.
2A. It says that the zoning administrator shall prepare staff reports and make recommendations. I mean, you make recommendations?
When asked.
Yes, I mean, maybe you want to say when asked. And this to me says your staff report will have a recommendation in it.
Okay.
And I'm okay either way. I just want to make sure we all agree that,
Yeah.
I mean, do you want Jay to make recommendations on each issue or when asked?
Well, I think we just, when asked, and depending on like certain, cases that might be a little tougher, for us, that what his recommendation would be.
Right.
So he wouldn't have to do it all. I mean, I guess when asked.
Yeah, it's really up, as far as I'm concerned, it's up to the committee what we want. I would be okay when asked.
How about if I add the zoning administrator shall prepare staff reports and may make recommendations?
That'd be fine.
Because then it's broad enough
Right.
that
Yep.
it
You're
can
okay
be.
with that?
Yep.
Yeah, because
And then I'm done?
Jay is reviewing them, and if he sees any red flags, he's
Right.
gonna bring it up.
Right.
Yeah, and I hate putting something in writing that says, I make a recommendation for approval because this seems good. Well, it's almost like a preconceived notion then to you that you would want to approve this as well. So that's where I'm
Right.
hesitant in actually making an approval without really having any type of robust discussion here within,
Right.
the public hearing process.
Right, and if you've got that power, then you're gonna get every applicant coming in with donuts for you.
Right. She's Danish.
Yeah,
But you can't do it.
then on page 21, we just need to clean up the committee members.
Yep.
Sorry to take so much
No,
time,
this
but
is super helpful. This is the
Right.
most efficient way to do it.
I would just like to get this done, and Jay wants to get it off his to-do list, and so the next step would be to make those changes, get it back on the agenda for the August meeting, or you'd publish it, right?
There would be, yeah.
With those
There would be
changes.
most likely a link published for the full version. I'd hate to publish 19 pages in the paper.
Right.
I think I can provide a link or direction as to where to go to view the full article.
I believe so.
Okay.
Okay.
That's I totally defer to
Then
Catherine.
if it makes,
Yes.
if it makes it through this committee in August, it would go to the county board in August for approval.
Correct.
I mean,
Well, yeah, in September,
September, yeah, because it would.
because we'd be after
Oh,
county
after
board.
county.
Or-
Right.
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry that took so much time.
Oh, good.
No, yeah.
We'll,
Sure.
Rebecca and I can work on a clean version to give back to this committee, hopefully within the next week. That gives you at least a few days to look it over to make sure there are no additional changes prior to us having to get it out to the paper by the 29th of July. So not too much time, but we'll get you
Well,
some.
we've been at this for a year.
Right.
What I'll do too is, I'll just accept all the red lines that we didn't talk about, and then include a red line of what we did talk about, so that way
Yeah.
you're not trying to keep
Right.
track of what, well, did we
Right,
change
no,
that?
I
Did
was
we
okay
change
with all
it?
the other red lines.
Okay.
Very good.
Any other business that may become before the committee for discussion only? If not, we're adjourned.